All right, new series. You want to start out hot, right? Wrong. We're going to start off with the 4-win Patriots. And before we do that, we have something more boring to tell you with the background to the stat itself. There's no positional value included, and players had to play 500 or more snaps roughly. There were a couple guys that got in with like 497 snaps. With that out of the way, let's start with these Fire Patriots who have at number 5 Marcus Jones. I almost called him Mac Jones. I don't think he's Mac Jones. Marcus Jones is somebody that played a lot of man coverage this year. He played 48% of his snaps in man coverage, which is 22 percentage points higher than his average for a corner. He wasn't the greatest at it, as he earned just a 50 grade per PFF, but when you factor in that he was getting a lot of hard assignments and wasn't getting much help, it makes sense that he didn't have the greatest man coverage grade. What I look more into is the fact that overall, PFF gave him the 33rd best ranking amongst all corners, and there's 118 corners in total, so 33 is actually really good. So Jones definitely has some redeeming qualities, even if he didn't have the most spectacular season in man coverage. He was doing it in a very difficult way, so I'm going to cut him some slack there. Number 4 is Hunter Henry, who put up some pretty gaudy numbers, as he was 12th in yards per game for tight ends. I don't think he's quite that good. I think some of the production came from being the only receiving option for the Patriots that could catch or run routes. But at the end of the day, he was catching those passes and he was running those routes at least semi decently. So I think that there's a lot of value in what he did, and especially because he's an effective run blocker as well. He helped the Patriots offense in a lot of ways, and I think he could do it for other teams as well, which is part of the value of a good player in my opinion, is that you can do it for other teams as well. You're not just, you know, maxed out with the team you're currently in. So at 3 now, we have Christian Ellis, who his stat is the culmination of 5 stats, because PFF has grades for coverage, run defense, blitzing, tackling is one of them. I forget the other one though. So in those 5 stats though, they gave Ellis the lowest grade of 66. That means in every other grade, he's better than that, of course. And 66 is a very respectable number. There's a lot of players that will kind of max out around 66. And it's not to say that he had grades in the 90s or anything, but for him to be so well rounded, I think that has a lot of value, especially in the modern era where, tight ends are like wide receivers are like tight ends, running backs are like fullbacks. I'm just kidding about that one. There's, so many different skill sets you have to defend at any given point, and to be well rounded, that gives you the best chance of doing that. So Ellis, very solid player. At number 2, we have the better of the 2 tight ends for the Patriots, in my opinion. The stats back me on this one, so if you disagree, I don't really know. But Austin Hooper, he was 8th in yards per route run for tight ends. Henry, I believe, was 22, so he wasn't as effective in the efficiency realm. Henry, that is. And Hooper like Henry, is a good run blocker as well. So there's a lot of value in having a guy that can, be top 10 for a tight end in route running efficiency and also be, even just a solid blocker. He's better than that too. He's a pretty darn good blocker. He's not the most, like athletic player, so sometimes there would be matchups that weren't favorable to him, but a lot of the times he would find gaps in zones or, just do enough of a move to get open in man coverage, and he was overall a pretty good threat for the Patriots as they had basically nobody to throw to. The number one player for the Patriots is Christian Gonzalez, who is super elite as a balanced corner. That's one thing these Patriots get right, at least they've gotten right in the past, is they get players that can do a little bit of everything. Christian Gonzalez, he's 12th best in PFF grade for zone coverage cornerbacks, but he's also capable of playing man coverage. He also played about 40% of his snaps in man coverage, which the average is about 26%. So he was doing, a lot of different things, and he was doing so effectively. I've said effectively a lot, but there's a lot of players that are doing things effectively. So Gonzalez, he is super athletic. There's nobody that's going to run past him in a foot race, pretty much. And he's a good tackler. I think he's improved in that area. I don't remember what his scouting report was for tackling, but I do remember that he was regarded as somebody that could play man coverage or zone coverage, which, that sounds like not that big of a deal. It sounds like something that should, be required of a corner. But there's a lot of guys that are way better at one than they are the other. Gonzalez, he's really good at both. And, I think he could thrive basically anywhere. Now we shift to the New York Jets, and I have a bit of a spicy take with them. As my number 5 player, I think people could argue is their best player. But in my defense, there's a lot of stats that don't really like him. And it's Garrett Wilson, their number 5 player. He was 25th in yards per game for all players, so that's really good. But he was 50th in yards per route run, so he wasn't the most efficient. And that's something I value a lot. I think it's probably something that goes under the radar for most people. I think most people are just what are his yards? What are his touchdowns? They're not too often preoccupied with yards per reception or yards per route run or anything of that nature. I think it matters a ton, and that's why I have him at 5. I think he's a very talented player that still has a lot of upside to him as well. It's hard to know what he is with not the greatest, quarterback situation around, let's say. I think that's a nice way to put it. And he's still young, so, there's some things definitely working in his favor. Regardless, he's still a top 5 player for the team, and he's more than capable of being a number 1 receiver for a lot of teams as well. Number 4 is Jamian Sherwood, who is 4th in stops for linebackers, which, if you don't know what stops are, I don't entirely either, but it's a stat that I really trust because smart people do. And the gist of it is, if you get a tackle on 1st and 10 that goes for 1 yard, they're like, that's successful. If you get a tackle that goes for 4 yards on 3rd and 15, they'll be like, that's successful. That's a stop. So he was racking those up. And in addition to that, you can't really target him in coverage. And that's really high praise for a linebacker. There's a lot of linebackers in this league that, you're like, ugh, they can stop the run. But man, when it gets to 3rd and 10, it's like, can we get an extra safety in there for them? You don't feel great with them. Sherwood, you could definitely, do better in coverage than him, but you could do so much worse as well. He's athletic, he's smart, he's overall a solid player in coverage, and he's really good against the run. So I think he's an underrated player. I think the linebacking duo for the Jets is really good outside of CJ Mosley. Mosley's also really good, but Quincy Williams also really solid, and then of course Jamie Sherwood as well. At number 3, we get to the snooze fest part of the video. We get to John Simpson, the offensive lineman. According to PFF, he is 16th in pass blocking, 8th in run blocking, and 11th overall for guards. That's a really balanced stat line, and he's really nasty. I like that about him. Yeah, he's just all around a super physical player. He was been that way since he was with Baltimore, and I think he started with Baltimore. Maybe he started somewhere else, but I just remember him for Baltimore. So he's a really, really good player, and he's unfortunately a little bit of a lesser version of their other guard, who is our number 2 player, Elijah Vera Tucker. Tucker is 12th in pass blocking, 12th in run blocking, and 9th overall for guards. You talk about balance, man. That's really good balance. He is, I think, living up to what the Jets aspired for him to be when they traded up for him. And, it still could be argued that you don't trade up for a guard if you have other needs. But if you're going to do it, get someone like Vera Tucker, who is really good in the run game and as a pass protector. At number 1, I think a lot of you may have thought he wasn't on the top 5 at all, but it's Devontae Adams. He is 9th in yards per game for all players, so he was super good. He's good with Rodgers, so that's got to carry some value. And I think that, what he showed was that he can still be dominant at the line of scrimmage and be great with his, releases. He's not really a threat to beat you deep downfield as much as he used to be. He never really was like a burner, but he at least had some element of that. I don't think he's doing that quite as much, but he can still win, back shoulder, fades, things of that nature. He's just really solid. As for the Miami Dolphins now, we get to our number 5 player, Jonnu Smith, who I think has been a bit of a meme in recent memory, as most people were like, Jonnu Smith is starting over Kyle Pitts? What? But with that said, Smith has actually proven to be a really good player. He was 5th in yards per route run for tight ends. That's really good stuff. He's not like the greatest blocker because he doesn't have quite as much strength or weight to him as, like the edge rushers he's going to go against a lot of the time. So he's not, for everybody. But I think overall, he's a really darn good tight end. He's not going to be, like someone you want in goal line run blocking situations, maybe. But, if you can get him outside on routes against a corner, he's going to abuse them. He's going to be too fast for linebackers. So it's really difficult to go against Jonnu Smith. Number 4 is Jalen Ramsey, who is 18th in man coverage for cornerbacks. And he's also really good in zone coverage as well, particularly when he can kind of, play off and let the play come to him and read what's going on. He's super good at tackling. He's one of the best tackling corners in the league. He's a guy that I know coming out of college, he was like a hybrid safety corner. I think for sure moving forward in his career as he ages and loses some speed, he could still be a safety. He's that good at tackling and pursuing a play. So he's very good overall. PFF ranks him as the 10th best corner in the league out of 118. So that's some good stuff. Number 3 for the Dolphins is Zach Seiler, who is 14th in pressures for interior defensive linemen. He is roughly 20th, I want to say, in stops as well. So he's very balanced in what he does. He is, I think, an underrated player for a lot of people, but overall, he's a really good piece for them. And, the loss of Christian Wilkins was big, but I think that Zach Seiler is, somebody that has made it less of an issue than it otherwise could have been. Number 2 is Calais Campbell, who is 7th in stops for interior defensive linemen. He is basically a souped up version of Seiler, in my opinion. Campbell can still play the big edge that moves inside on passing downs role, or just in general, play defensive tackle. And he can do it really well. He is like Seiler again, in that he is just super balanced. He can pressure the quarterback with the best of them. He can defend the run at an elite level. I don't know how old Campbell is exactly. He's got to be like 37 or so at this point. He is definitely old. So props to him for still being this good at the age he is. Number 1 for the Dolphins is Teron Armstead. He is one of the most athletic offensive linemen in the league. He can play tight end if he wants to. Probably not. That's a bit much. But he is 8th in pass blocking, 6th in run blocking, and 4th overall, according to PFF. And he has an 89 grade. So that's elite across the board. He can pull as good as any tackle in the league, I would say. The only thing that really hampers him is injuries, but that hasn't been as big of an issue recently as it has been throughout his career. As we move now to the Bills, we start at number 5 with Khalil Shakir, who is an absolute demon at the slot position. He can play outside as well, but he's definitely a slot at heart. He's 21st in yards per route run in the league, and he's a good run blocker for his size, so he's very valuable in that sense. He's all around a very good player, and I think he's pretty clearly the number 1 for the Bills. I initially was of the mindset that Cooper was, and I was sticking to that for a while, but even I have kind of come to the realization that he's just not, producing like he had in recent years. So I think it's Shakir as their number 1 guy. And that isn't to say that he's the number 1 guy for the offense, at least weapon-wise, as James Cook is tied for first in touchdowns for running backs. He is really good. He has so many runs that just show a variety of skills where he's very fast. He has good balance. He's pretty strong. I wouldn't say that he is like the strongest, but he's not weak. He's got good moves. He can juke, he can spin, he can, do anything like that. He's so good all around. He can catch. So basically everything in a running back that you would want, Cook delivers on. And there's definitely times too where, they get to the red zone and Allen becomes the running back, basically. And Cook, loses touches there. So Cook could be even higher in the touchdown realm than he is, which is terrifying because he's, again, tied for number 1. At number 3, we have Greg Rousseau, who is 10th in both pressures and stops for edge rushers, which I think perfectly encapsulates the type of player that he is. He is so balanced. I know that's been like a theme throughout this video that I've like focused on these balanced players, but I truly think it is something that's super valuable. Rousseau is a big, big edge. He's got to be, I'd say, like one of the 10 biggest edges, probably, even higher than that for like height and weight if you did percentiles for his ranks there. Like he could be a small defensive tackle on pass rushing situations. Like he'd be smaller than Ed Oliver, so he's not, going to do that on a consistent basis. But I think he genuinely could do that because he's like, I want to say he's like 265 and then like 6'6". He is really big and he's really good at stopping the run, really good at stopping or getting after the quarterback. All around, one of the better edge rushers in this league. At number 2, we have Christian Benford, who is 8th in man and 11th in zone coverage, according to PFF. He is overall the 6th best corner in PFF ranks, so I would say he's pretty legit. I love that he's as good in man coverage as he is, because Buffalo doesn't play very much man, but it's nice to have a guy that can, and that's something that they really haven't had much of throughout the years. So Benford being as good in man coverage is certainly a valuable trait that they have in him. And speaking of valuable things, number 1 is Josh Allen. If you couldn't have guessed, it's, Allen. He is just a complete monster. It's hard to, go into any depth with him because I feel like everybody's already, said their piece on him. But Allen, he's fast enough. And then you factor in his strength and bulkiness. He is so tough in the run game, the scrambling. He extends plays about as well as anybody. He's got as good of an arm as anybody. Yeah, he's really good. I might go into more depth with this when I do my quarterback ranking video, but those are the keynotes on Allen. He's very accurate as well. He's stopped his turnovers pretty well. A lot of it was bad luck throughout the years, as his turnover-worthy play percentage wasn't very high, but he was getting a lot of interceptions still. So some of that's just variance coming his way finally, but either way, he's not turning the ball over like he used to. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe for more NFL content. And that'll be all.